Are you ready to take your message, your business, and your life to the next level?
Want to learn from someone with more than a decade of experience, training tens of thousands of people from all around the world?
Hi, Cliff. This is Pauline from Auckland, New Zealand.
John from Calgary, Alberta.
Amy Porterfield.
Michael Hyatt.
Dan here from Dunedin, New Zealand.
Ray Edwards.
Mark Mason. Mike Stelzner.
Pat from Smart Passive Income.
It's Darren from Melbourne, Australia.
Now is the time to live the life of your dreams and do the work you feel most called to do in the world.
Welcome to the Cliff Ravenscraft Show.
Here's your host, Cliff Ravenscraft.
That's right, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Cliff Ravenscraft Show. I don't know if you caught the subtle difference that was inside of my intro, but I did have it changed. In fact, I am super thankful to my friends Mike and Isabella Russell over at Music Radio Creative for helping me remove any mention of podcasting from the opening of the show. Now, for those of you who listen on a regular basis, you may also recognize that my audio quality is a little bit different here as I'm opening the show not from my studio, but instead I am currently away on a 6-day writing retreat. Now, I just got back from San Diego, where I spent 5 days at Social Media Marketing World, connecting with hundreds of people from all over the world. Had an incredible experience in San Diego, and I came back on Saturday. Stayed at home for a few days, connecting with the family and recuperating from all that time with so many people. As the introvert that I am, I needed to recuperate quite a bit. But then earlier today, on Thursday, March 8th, I left my home again, and I am currently in the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee. My parents own a beautiful home on Lake Douglas down here. It's a little vacation home that they purchased a couple years ago. I like to come down here. This is the first time I've ever come to the lake house all by myself. In fact, I don't even think in my entire life have I ever gone anywhere for 6 days of complete and utter solitude. It is so weird to be by myself for 6 days, but that's what I've done. I've come down here. I said that I'm here for a writing retreat. I don't want to give anybody any false hope. I'm not writing a book. Instead, I'm spending these 6 days completely 100% devoted to creating the talks that I will be giving at the Free the Dream Conference coming up on September 7th, 8th, and 9th. Now, I did not put out a podcast episode last Friday because I was in San Diego, and I didn't want to just record something because I felt like I had to put out an episode last week. I could have done that. I thought about doing that. I almost did that, but I chose to just simply wait until I had something that I desperately wanted to put out into the world in another podcast episode. And, well, knowing that I had already planned this writing retreat, I started to think, wow, am I going to put out an episode this Friday? I can't imagine me taking 2 weeks off, and I did not want to do that. And then before I left town to come out on this writing retreat, to come here to prepare these talks for my own conference that I'm hosting later this year, I took my wife to a quarterly doctor's appointment that she has. And it's something that I do for her because after she does this doctor's appointment, she's not feeling all that herself. And so I drive her to the doctor's appointment, and then she comes home from that. And I like to drive her home so that she doesn't have to sit and wait for a couple hours for herself to feel right afterwards. So this is something that I do every 3 months for my wife. And it just so happens to be that 6 months ago, or 2 visits ago, I had just finished reading The Big Leap, and I was so excited about The Big Leap that when Stephanie had gone in to visit the doctor, right there from the parking lot, I fired up Facebook Live, and, well, needless to say, a lot of things have gone down since that Facebook live stream. Now, today, it just happens to be 2 visits later, or since it's quarterly, it's now 6 months that have passed since I told the world about the big leap and what it was causing me to think about and what I wanted to do as a result of making my own, the desire to make my own big leap into spending a majority of my life inside of my zone of genius. And since I did this 6-month update today on Facebook Live again, I listened back to it, and I was getting ready to put it out as a vlog, which, by the way, if you've already seen vlog episode number 151, where it's me sitting in the car giving a 6-month update, it was basically titled 6 months after my big leap. And if you've already seen that, then you've already heard what I'm about ready to play for you here in this podcast episode. So that's what I wanted to do here. I wanted to set up for you what you're about ready to hear, which is the audio stripped out of the video that was recorded when I did my Facebook Live earlier this morning, sharing what life has been like, what has transpired in the past 6 months since making the big leap into my zone of genius. And if you don't have any clue what I'm talking about, it should all come together by listening to this right here. What is up, everybody? Cliff Ravenscraft here, and I am creating a vlog episode on Facebook Live today. It is, what is today? Thursday, March 8th, 2018, and I am sitting in the front seat of my wife's vehicle, Miss Piggy, our 2013 Honda Pilot, as I sit here in the parking lot of her doctor's office. I have a very fond connection to these live streams right here from the front seat of the car because it was, I guess, 6 months ago that I talked about the big leap. And that was a huge, big moment for me when I came onto Facebook Live and I expressed in front of an audience in public, not just talking friend to friend with people, about the idea that, man, I wonder what life would be like if I just completely shut down podcasting A to Z, which at the time was my number one source of income, and it was a majority of my income. And to think that now, 6 months ago, I was still teaching people how to podcast, and I haven't done that since September of last year, and my life has never been better. It was quite a transition, and I'm super excited by what's happened over the past 6 months. So since then, I have ended podcasting A to Z. I have not received a penny in income from teaching people how to podcast since September of last year. And my income has actually increased every month since then. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that I discovered my zone of genius, which I talked about 6 months ago and have been talking about a lot since. And I not only have discovered my zone of genius, but I made a commitment to myself and to those around me that I will only operate, I want to operate inside of my zone of genius a minimum of 80% of the time. Life is radically different than when I sat in this car seat, in this parking lot, in this exact parking spot 6 months ago. Life is radically different. In fact, it is so different that it's the same kind of difference between what my life was like 6 months after I left my career in insurance after 12 years. And it's so funny because it was 12 years that I spent doing having the lifestyle of an insurance agent, right? Selling auto, home, life, and health and business insurance. I spent 12 years doing that. And then I spent 12 years focused on helping people discover the world of podcasting, helping them successfully launch their podcast. And over the past 12 years, I've helped more than 30,000 people launch a podcast. And now, the next 12 years of my life, I'm super excited to say that I'm going to be devoting that to doing something that I've had in my mind. It's like, I wonder if it would be possible to make a living by creating content and products and services that allow me to spend all of my time entertaining, educating, encouraging, and inspiring others. But doing something that is more than just teaching people, what mixer and microphone combinations, what cables do you need to hook this up? How do you hook everything up and dial things in on your mixer so that you can have the person hear your voice on Skype, but not their own voice played back to them? All of that stuff. I wonder if I could actually do something that is more fulfilling to me. Not that I don't find, I'm not saying that the last 12 years have not been fulfilling. They have. And I think that the past 12 years have been necessary for me to be able to get to the place where I am the person today that allows me to have the ability to help people in the way that I'm doing. So I just began to dream that question. My zone of genius is creating content that entertains, educates, encourages, and inspires. And beyond the world of podcasting. That is the big thing. It's like beyond the world of podcasting. And so I started my weekly mastermind group called the Next Level Mastermind. And people had talked to me years ago about the idea of recurring revenue and that you should look into some kind of monthly program where, you're not always out there having to market. And I had this dream of doing a mastermind group a long time ago. In fact, I started one and did one for 2 years called the Podcast Mastermind. But when I did it, my goal was to have a brand new stream of income in my business that would generate $10,000 a month. And at the time, everybody's doing membership programs for $29 a month, $39 per month, $50 per month. And here I was wanting to do a recurring revenue monthly membership program that would generate $100 per month from 100 people. That's how it all started. So I remember sitting down and having a conversation with a friend of mine in Columbus, Ohio. And we talked about, hey, if I had a monthly membership program, what would I offer as benefits that would create a value of $100 per month, which is significantly more than what most of my friends in the online business space are charging for their monthly membership. And of course, the one thing that I looked at in my life that has been the single most beneficial thing as far as my personal and professional growth has been my participation in a mastermind group. And I'm like, I could offer, the online environment, the connecting people who are like-minded on a similar path and stuff like that. But I really believe that the true value in what I could bring to the table, and I think that $100 would be way too inexpensive for it, but still, it's a no-brainer. I think I could do it, is if I did a mastermind group. And so I created something called the Podcast Mastermind, where people who were podcasters but who wanted to take and hopefully the idea was that it would be people who wanted to build a business or grow their business around their podcasting. And so that's what it was called, the Podcast Mastermind. And I did it for $100 per month. And I think at the time we were doing, I wanted to do 10 groups of no more than 10 people, because I think a mastermind group should have no more than 12 people. But I was thinking of the $10,000 goal, and then with 100 people, that would be 10 groups of 10. And so I started promoting it, and I realized that once I first of all, I knew that I wanted to do the $100 per month membership program. And what happened was I had announced it already to the world before I thought about doing it as mastermind groups. And so I already had a lot of people who were eagerly waiting for me to launch this membership program so that they could join whatever program I had for $100 per month. But when I decided to do it as the mastermind, I did decide to do it for $297 per month. And so I figured, I'm going to open it up for 1 week and let those people who I've told that it would be $100 a month. I said, listen, if you join, it'll be $100 per month, but it's only going to be open for 1 week. And then after that, it's going to go to $297 a month. Well, I opened it up for 1 week and I filled 5 groups of 10 people per group. And so I had 50 people paying $100 per month to be in a part of the Next Level Mastermind. Each of those 5 groups met twice a month, 90-minute meetings. It was like the first and the third Tuesdays of each month. And I did eventually open it up again later, and I had people who then were paying $300 per month. Now, I will tell you, I went to my business advisors, and one of my business advisors was Dan Miller, and he still is today. He's a good friend of mine. And I said, Dan, I want to see what you think about this. And I thought he would think it was a great idea because I first learned about mastermind groups from Dan Miller. And he says, Cliff, I think it's a terrible idea. And I'm like, what? And he says, I think it's a terrible idea. I think that, the idea of you doing 10 groups of 10 people, that's so much work. He said, and I had told him everything I told you. He says, your goal is to get to 10,000, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he says, well, why don't you just find 10 people who will pay $1,000 a month to be in your mastermind group? And quite frankly, back then, this was like 5-6 years ago. No, it was probably more than that, maybe 6 or 7 years ago. Back then, my mindset, I did not believe that I could get 10 people to pay me $1,000 a month. For whatever reason, I just wasn't there yet. And so I thanked him for his thoughts and stuff. I said, but I'm really excited about this. I know it's a lot of work, but it's the kind of work that I'm really interested in doing. And I did the Next Level Mastermind, or the Podcast Mastermind, for 2 years before I shut it down. And I shut it down because it was too much work. It was so many meetings, so many people. Plus, on top of that, I had so many other streams of income. I was the director of podcasting for Blog World New Media Expo at the time. I had podcasting A to Z going on 6 times a year. I had so many other things, and I had these calls. It was way too much work. And so after 2 years, on the 2nd anniversary of the Podcast Mastermind, I shut it down. Now, I got to tell you, those were wonderful 2 years. I don't regret any of the time invested in the people that were in those groups. In fact, everybody who was still in the mastermind at the time, I think there were still 47 people when I actually shut it down. And many of those people were actually paying $300 because a lot of the $100 a month people, not a lot, several of the $100 a month people had dropped out, and I had replaced them with people who were paying $300 a month. I mean, people like John Lee Dumas was a part of the Podcast Mastermind for an entire year before he ever launched Entrepreneur on Fire. So it was a great experience. A lot of wonderful things came out of it. And when I shut it down, everybody was upset. They were like, Cliff, please keep this. I want to continue to pay you. But it just was, when it came to the leverage of my time, it wasn't the right thing for me to continue doing. And several of the groups were so closely bonded that two of the 5 groups continued to meet. One of them still meets today. And this was like many, many years ago. But anyway, so back January 2016, I started to have private conversations with only my closest friends about this idea that one day I'd like to completely divorce myself from the brand Podcast Answer Man. And a couple of my friends advised me against this strongly. I mean, they were like, it's like, Cliff, that's ridiculous. Do you know how much brand equity you have? And I'm like, yes, unfortunately, I do. And the thing is when people come to me, most people, like 99 out of 100 people who come to me for advice on technical things related to podcasts. And do I have answers to 99.9% of their questions? Yes. Is it what I feel called to do in this world? No, it's not how I want to spend my time. I'd rather spend my time with somebody who has a dream and a desire to do something they feel called to do in this world, but they don't believe they can do it. And I want to have a conversation with them and discover why it is that they have this dream, and then help them understand what limiting beliefs are holding them back, and that I want to help people change their beliefs about who they are, what they're able to achieve in this world. I want to help people discover and break free from limiting beliefs. I want to help people rediscover the ability to dream big and like massive dreams. I want to help people set and achieve any goal. These are the things that I want to do with my life. And so I'm like, yeah. And I said, if I could do it all over again, I would love to launch another mastermind group. But this time I would want to do, and this was January 2016. In January 2016, I started talking to some friends. I said, I think I'd like to do a paid mastermind group again. But this time it has nothing to do with podcasters. As a matter of fact, I don't care if anybody in the group has a podcast other than me. But instead, I would like to do a mastermind group for $1,000 per month per person. And the only requirement is that they are somewhere in an online business journey or self-employed business journey from where I was in 2007 through, let's say, 2010, or maybe even up to where I am today. But my ideal target is Cliff Ravenscraft from 2007 to Cliff Ravenscraft 2010. And by the way, Cliff Ravenscraft 2007 was I'm full-time employed as an insurance agent, and I've got this little thing that I'm building on the side, this little hobby, this little thing I'm creating content, I'm making a difference, there's this dream that has been reawakened inside of me of going out and encouraging people, being a minister, all of this other stuff. And it's just like, man, this is so cool. And so it's right when that question, so Cliff Ravenscraft 2007 is the guy who for the first time spoke the words out loud, I wonder what life would be like if I could do this instead of my day job. That's the starting point of people who I'd love to have in the mastermind. And then Cliff Ravenscraft 2010 is the Cliff Ravenscraft who put in his 90-day notice in September 2007, January 1st, 2008, full-time self-employed, had no idea what to do in running a business, didn't even think of himself as a business owner. He was just a guy working, trying to find ways to put food on the table for his wife that's a stay-at-home mom, 3 young kids, struggling to figure out pricing and value and all this other stuff. And at the end of the first year, only had $11,000 net income. Wow. And then 2009, having it turn, much better. Thankfully, we didn't go into any debt, but throughout the entire experience. But then in 2010, just some divine connections connected me to other people who recognized who I was and what I was offering to the world, and people like Dan Miller, Michael Hyatt, and so many other people I got connected with that put me in front of hundreds of thousands of people, and then things really started to take off. And so it was that's where I was from 2007 to 2010. And of course, things have been incredibly awesome since 2010, but I want to help people who had my mindset back then, who were struggling with the things that I struggled with, because there are things I know today that if I knew what I know now, I would have not had the same. I would have had a completely different year. I would have had a completely different transition plan from my day job into full-time self-employment. I would have had a drastically different first 90 days, first 9 months, first 2 years. So I'm like, this is what I want to do. I want to help these people. So I started dreaming about doing this mastermind, this paid mastermind for $1,000 per month, back in January 2016. And everybody that I talked to, which I only talk to those people who I'm surrounded with that really believe in me, like my business mastermind or my business advisors and my personal mastermind group. And almost all of them said, Cliff, I love this direction. I think this is absolutely. And I had 2 people in my life that says, Cliff, when are you going to start that mastermind? When are you going to start that mastermind? But I still had a few mindset hangups that were holding me back. And so I, at the same time in January 2016, I was again talking to people privately about, I wonder what life would be like if I didn't have any money at all coming in from podcast coaching and consulting. I wonder what life would be like if I could actually make a living that was more profitable than what I'm doing right now, and it had nothing to do with podcasting at all. I wonder what life would be like if I could make a living by getting on stage and encouraging and educating and inspiring people and motivating. And I wonder what life would be like if I could make a living, just going live on Facebook and creating podcast content and doing some online courses and some webinars and oh yeah, that membership, that mastermind, that weekly mastermind, people pay me I wonder what life would be like. And I'm like, I wonder if it's even possible. And I thought about, is it possible? Is there anybody out there who makes a living, a very good living financially, by creating content, speaking, doing all the various types of content, products and service, but where the primary motivation is that I turn to this guy and I'm willing to buy his products and services, or I'm willing to pay for the content that he creates? Is there anybody out there that does it where the main purpose is that whenever I tune into this person, I feel entertained? I always come away with some sort of educational experience. I've learned something from the content that this person has put out. I'm always encouraged and I'm always inspired and motivated to take my life to the next level. Is there anybody out there that does that? And there's one person whose name came up over and over and over again in my mind, and it was Tony Robbins. And at the time, I was not a Tony Robbins follower. The only thing I knew about Tony Robbins was, I remember as an insurance agent, I spent 2 weeks at a sales training boot camp it was this big, huge sales training program for 2 weeks. Yes, 2 weeks intensive training all day, every day. It was insane. I'm thankful for it today because I love to sell and I have all kinds of great techniques and stuff. But I remember every night in the hotel, late at night, I'd be flipping through the TV stations, and there's this guy, Tony Robbins, on these infomercials. And I would tune into him for a little bit, and he seemed like he was a very entertaining guy. He captured my attention. What he was sharing seemed to be very educational, and I found him encouraging and inspiring and motivational, and so much so that, he was selling something, obviously, some of his audio programs or something like that. And I remember not buying them at the time, but I remember thinking, this guy, I've heard a lot about him. He seems to be very successful. And over the years, connecting with the people that I do life with today, I'm in the personal development, personal growth, professional growth industry. I am in I never thought of it, but I guess I am in the self-help improvement, personal improvement industry myself. So now, of course, I know all these people who know Tony Robbins personally. I've actually had clients who worked. Amy Porterfield used to work for Tony Robbins, and I taught Amy Porterfield how to do her podcast. But anyway, so I know a lot about Tony Robbins, and I'm like, this seems to be a guy, but that's Tony Robbins. Cliff Raven, who am I, right? Who am I? And so what happens is I'm going from January 2016 and I'm having these conversations, and I said to my friend Ray Edwards, I said, I'm going to tell you about a dream that I have. And I have a dream that one day I'll actually have my own stadium events, and that I'll have 30 to 50,000 people who will be, I will be standing on a stage in a stadium in front of 30 to 50,000 people. And that those people did not come there. I'm not just a speaker at somebody else's event, but that would be my event. And I just floated that by. I just wanted to see what kind of reaction that might possibly get. And I was shocked to get, it's like, I totally see that. I totally see that. Ray said that. And then that gave me the freedom to, only in some very intimate conversations with people, and I say around the world. I was actually doing the opening keynote to the Asia Pacific Podcast Conference in New Zealand. And I was invited to have dinner with some very interesting people there that followed me, but I did not know them very well, but I got to know them extremely well, having dinner with them that night. And after dinner, we sat in the living room and we were all just talking, and they got me to say, so Cliff, what's next for you? And I remember this was, I think, only the second time I actually spoke this out loud to somebody. And I said, well, if I'm going to tell you something. This is right around that time when I'm, dreaming about divorcing myself from the Podcast Answer Man brand. And I said, I have this vision of the future that has nothing to do with training people how to podcast. And they said, well, we've kind of, we kind of sense that you're making some sort of transition. It seems like, the focus of your show has changed. I'm like, yeah, there are some people that like it, some people not so much. And I said, and then I floated this idea by them. I said, I'm going to share with you guys something that's going to sound crazy. But I have a vision of myself in front of a crowd of 30 to 50,000 people, where those people came to hear me speak, and it has nothing to do with podcasting. And everybody in the room, there were like 5 people in the room, and everyone else said, absolutely, I totally see that. And I'm like, what? How? Because am I the only person that this seems freaking crazy to? I mean, am I the only one that feels like I'm delusional? Because this seems really weird stuff to me. And so I got to the place where I started having this conversation with several more friends. By the way, every single person that I told said, Cliff, I want you to know, I believe that you can do this. And the first time you do a stadium event, I want you to know I will be there. Since then, no, it's been over 2 years now. It's been, 2 years and 3 months. And so over the past 2 years, 3 months, I've told well over 100 people face-to-face this, and every single one of them says, I'll be there. So if you think about it, I really only need 29,900 more people to have this conversation with, and then if I can get all of them to commit to being there, then I'll fill my stadium with all those people. But anyway, I remember having more private conversations over time, over the first few months of 2016, with my friend Ray Edwards, and I started to actually not just say, hey, I have this vision of the future, but I started to put a time frame, 10 to 20 years, 10 to 20 years, 10 to 20 years. And he says, Cliff, the thing is you keep talking about this thing and you keep saying 10 to 20 years. Why not next year? And I'm like, okay, Ray, come on. Seriously? Why not next year? Well, let me give you a list of all the reasons why not next year. But the thing is, it challenged me to say, why can't it be sooner than 20 years down the road? Why does it, in 20 years down, I'll be in my 60s. All right. I'll be in my 60s 20 years down the road. Why do I have to wait until my 60s to fulfill a dream? Tony Robbins, I've since learned a lot about Tony Robbins. I didn't know this at the time, but Tony Robbins didn't wait until somebody gave him permission, until all the things. He took actions to fulfill dreams, and he knew what his outcome was. He developed a plan, took action, and then he evaluated all the results that he got and said, hey, am I closer to my goal or not? And he basically readjusted his plans and took different actions until he finally got the things that he wanted in life. And that's where he came out with what he calls his ultimate success formula. It's a 4-stage process. Number 1, know your outcome. Number 2, take immediate action. Number 3, evaluate your results. And then number 4, change your approach if necessary. So that's Tony Robbins' ultimate success formula. Anyway, so Ray says, Cliff, you keep talking about Tony Robbins seems to be a guy who, in your mind, is doing what it is that you want to do. And I had not heard about Tony's teaching about role modeling, ROLE, role modeling, and that is find somebody who is already doing what it is that you want to do. Go and become a student of that person, learn what actions they're taking, and then go and find those actions and take those actions yourself, and then evaluate your results. And if necessary, change your approach a little bit. Keep trying until you keep failing until you succeed. Keep failing until you don't fail anymore. Don't be afraid of failure. Failure is just a learning experience. And so Ray says, why don't you keep talking about Tony Robbins? Why don't you go to one of his events just so you can see what it's like to be to see somebody on stage where 10,000, 12,000 people came to hear him speak. It'll give you an idea of what he does. And I'm like, that's a great idea. And so I took Stephanie to Unleash the Power Within in June of 2016, and life-changing experience. I'm like, yes, I want to do this. I want to be able to do what Tony just did here. I want to be able to do that. And I don't want to wait 10 to 20 years. And so I came back home from that with a lot of limiting beliefs completely eliminated. One of the big key takeaways is I am going to launch that paid mastermind, $1,000 per month. Now, did it happen right away? No. There were some things that needed to be done. There was a transition to take place. And it probably, knowing what I know today, I know for a fact it could have happened. Everything that I've done in the past 6 months could have been done in June of last year. But the only thing that was holding me back, there was still a couple of things in my mindset that was holding me back. So what happened was, after Unleash the Power Within, I've ordered a bunch of other Tony Robbins materials that talk about personal power, creating lasting change, and just all of the things that I've learned since then. It's like, wow, this is extremely valuable for me personally. And now that I'm equipped with this and I'm applying these principles and these tactics and techniques to my own life, and I'm seeing how drastically it's changing my own life, I wonder if I can do some one-on-one mentoring. So before I decided I wanted to test the waters to see if I could make some income. I wanted to validate the business model of Cliff Ravenscraft, life coach or business mentor. So I began offering right away one-on-one mentoring calls, and I was doing them, I think, for $300 an hour. And I had people who were signing up. I worked with about 15 people over a 3-month period of time through one-on-one mentoring. And every single one of them were absolutely amazing calls. After I got off of them, I was like, yes, I love this. This is so great. And I think that they were actually saying the same thing. It was incredible transformation just in a 1-hour conversation with people. And then I started to say, okay, I want to do a live event in my studio. I built my house with the ability to do training space. And so I did that. I have built the studio space where I can train 14 people at a time very comfortably. And I invited people to come out, and I created this next level workshop, which, by the way, I'm doing my next one April 6th and 7th. You can find out the details at nextlevelworkshop.live, L-I-V-E, not .com, so nextlevelworkshop.live. But anyway, I said, hey, if you are looking to start or grow an online business and you have no idea where to start, you've got all of these different ideas, people have told you all these different things you have to do. If you need help discovering exactly what order you should do these things, especially if you want to create a business where you're able to do consulting, coaching one-on-one, group coaching. If you want to get to the place where people see you as an authority in a particular niche, and you want to be able to do online courses, membership programs, that kind of stuff. If you want to build that kind of business, come to the Next Level Workshop. Especially if you have either just started, getting ready to start, just started, or if you've been doing this for a while and you're not consistently making a minimum of $10,000 per month, then you must come to this workshop. And so I started promoting that, and since then I've sold out several sessions of the Next Level Workshop. And then I'm like, okay, that's awesome. And after doing a lot of successful one-on-one mentoring with people, no podcast topics allowed in the discussion, once I did several live events of this Next Level Workshop, and people paying, by the way, $2,000 to attend it and walking away giving me the most awesome testimonials you could possibly imagine. People's lives are radically transformed. People who were making next to no income whatsoever, immediately generating $5,000 of recurring monthly revenue right out of the gate. Incredible experience. So I'm like, okay, now I feel confident. I'm ready to create the Next Level Mastermind. And so I started that back in November after shutting down the Podcasting A to Z course. And as of today, I have 15 members. I have 2 different groups. I have an AM group and a PM group. And the AM group has 9 members and the PM group has 6 members. And each of those members are paying $1,000 a month, and they are all absolutely in love with the experience. It's a total win for everybody there. I just got a note last night, an update last night from one of my PM Mastermind members, Stacy Westfall. Her husband has doubled his income as a result of her being in the mastermind, because I gave each one of them during my next level workshop. I have this pricing a session on pricing and money, and I recorded an online webinar version of that just for members of the Next Level Mastermind. This is just one session out of the Next Level Workshop. And I shared it with the Next Level Mastermind. And while Stacy had shared it with her husband as well, because she was thinking about how she was going to increase her rates or double her rates, it actually convinced not only her to do it, but her husband as well. And her husband had gone to all of his existing clients, and at the end of each of their sessions said, hey, it's time to, I have to double my rates. I'm doubling my rates, and didn't lose a single client. All of them booked to continue on. And I'm like, yes, this is awesome. So today I'm living the dream. And actually I'm getting ready to host my first big conference. Now it's not going to be 30,000 people, 50,000 people. But I figure, hey, I'm going to take these steps from working with people one-on-one, not related to podcasting, working with people, 14 people at a time in a workshop for 2 days. That's awesome. Working with people on a weekly basis in a mastermind group where people are getting a ton of value for their $1,000 a month. Again, not related to podcasting. This is awesome. Okay, next big step. It's the Free the Dream Conference coming up September 7th, 8th, and 9th. If you want to be notified, you can go to freethedream.live, freethedream.live, freethedream.live. You can put your name and email address in there. I'll notify you when tickets go on sale. But that event we've already got the space. And today, after Stephanie gets finished with her doctor's appointment here, we're going to go out to breakfast. I'm going to go home and I'm going to work out probably before I head down. But then I'm leaving. I just got back from San Diego, but I am just now leaving for a 6-day writing retreat. I'm going to spend the next 6 days in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And in the mountains, I am going to do nothing other than outlining all of my talks that I will be delivering at the Free the Dream Conference, which is my own version of an Unleash the Power Within event. So, yeah, that is where I have been over the last, that's like a overview of a couple years. But I made the big leap, my friends. It all started in this seat, in this car, in this parking spot, in this parking lot 6 months ago. The Big Leap, it was huge. I encourage you, if you've not read The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, do so. And if you read that book and it begins to open up all kinds of things in your mind and you'd like to have somebody that you can process that with, I have a mentoring package I could offer you. 3 1-hour sessions for $3,500. We can do those anytime within a 90-day period. If you're interested, just email me, cliff@cliffravenscraft.com, and put mentoring in the subject line. Yeah, that's it. I think this is way too long for a vlog episode on my YouTube channel, but this is what I felt led to record today. And until next time, I encourage you to take everything you do to the next level.